I'm Kaeli Cook, and I'm a potter, and I studied at the Craft College in Fredericton. I graduated in 2001, and I've had the studio for 2 years now. It was just an empty garage, and my dad and I fixed it up, put some walls in, a new flooring, and made it what it is. This is where I do a lot of the finishing, like I put the handles on the mugs and like hand building stuff. And this is my wheel. So this is where I do probably 60% of my work I do here on the wheel. This is the glazing area. That's all of the different chemicals that I get. There's big tubs of things I use a lot of, and the triple balance beam scale to weigh out everything. So there's the kiln, and I can open it, and so there's shelves in it, so I would layer pots and then put in these posts and more stuff, so you can layer lots and lots of things. I can fit 70 mugs in here. And over here I've got the different size stilts and these lovely things, which are the cones. They're made up out of the chemicals and the clay. They're different numbers, and they melt at different temperatures. So you put them in the kiln and you can see them through the little holes, and when they melt they tell you when to turn off the kiln. I grew up in Sackville, and there's a lot of other potters in the area, and a lot of them when they've upgraded, they've given me a lot of their stuff. I've gone to work for them, or have helped them build kilns in exchange for kilns. And so my potter's wheel came from Rachel Maroney, and my kiln came from Gita Levin. I helped her build a wood fire kiln in exchange for her kiln. And this is my favorite tool. I got it from, when I was finishing school, there was a potter that passed away, and all of his equipment went up for silent auction, and I got I won all his tools. So I've got most of my tools I use actually came from him. Well, yeah, on the bulletin board here I have just things that inspire me or that I've collected over the years. Some of it's my own work. Some of it's just a lot of maritime-y things. These are test tiles. I was given a whole bunch of pre-made glazes, different colors, and I was just trying them out on the brown clay and the white clay, the same colors, just to see what would happen. So I was given paint and then some chalk, and these are the chalk. And I ended up using the chalk to make the birch trees, drawing on those. The stool is the perfect height for sitting at that table and working. The table's a bit high. I've made it that high so that I could wedge clay on it. When the clay gets air bubbles in it, it's kind of like kneading bread. You gotta get all the air bubbles out so the piece doesn't explode when it's in the kiln, or when you're throwing it on the wheel, you'll bump into it and then it throws everything off center. So the table's the right height so that it doesn't hurt my back. But then it's too high to do a lot of other things, so I have to sit. When I'm working, there's always music or a podcast or something playing. Right now, the Marine Dreams is my favorite. I'm listening to it all the time. And Christine Fellows is another artist that's always in my stereo. When I first bought my house, it was a car garage that was falling into the ground. There wasn't a proper floor on it. There had been a wood stove, so in one corner there were cement stones and a chimney, and it was just one big open room. So I knew that if I was going to have a kiln in here, I had to have a separate room for it so it would be properly ventilated. So that was one of the first things I had to think about, was what corner I wanted that to go in and how much space I wanted it to take. Because pottery takes up a lot of room, and I also wanted to be able to have space to have shelving to show off my work. I've never been able to have that before. I've always just kind of found grand, dark, like garages somewhere to work in. So windows was another important thing. And yeah, so we just kind of went from there. Well, I work seasonally, so I have a job at a greenhouse, and I do a lot of my own gardening and work around my yard, and I love knitting and basket weaving, so I spend a lot of time in my house in the evenings doing that kind of stuff. And I really like to cook, so I do that too. I like to get up relatively early and have some coffee and some breakfast and kind of start my day really slowly. And then by 10 o'clock, I'll come out to the studio, and then I usually work until 2 or 3 o'clock, and then go have some lunch. And then if I'm having a very productive day, I come back and I do some more work, or I just kind of putter around the house and garden and do all those other things that I love doing. Right now, I don't feel like there's anything that I can't make. It's more that I don't have time to make a lot of the things I want to make. I feel like I could if I had time to, which I think is most people's problems. I have another little studio in the house that's full of yarn and basket making and sewing stuff that maybe someday will go in the upstairs of my studio. Have it all in one space. A lot of the sewing and knitting stuff I do doesn't really feel like work. I can do a lot of it while I'm watching TV or sitting on the couch inside the house, and it seems like more personal time, kind of downtime. So yeah, I do. It is part of my art practice, but it feels very separate from my pottery stuff. Sometimes I'd like to find ways to combine the mediums together, because they're very different, and I find that they inspire each other somehow, but they're also very different in a way that the pottery's very dirty, and the knitting and the basket weaving, like you don't want to get it dust and covered in mud and everything, so it can be hard to combine the two. My mom's an artist, so I did a lot of art and was always doing craft things when I was little, but I think when I was probably somewhere between 10 and 12, there was an art show, they used to have craft shows on campus in the kind of the foyer between the Crabtree and the library, and some of it happened. It must have been in the lobby of the library as well. And I used to spend weekends with my mom at craft sales, and there was a woman there that was making bowls out of copper. She had these silvery looking mushrooms that you would put the piece of copper over and you'd hammer it and it would slowly form when she was demonstrating, and I spent all day hammering bowls. And I guess on the way home I told my mom that's what I want to do. I just had so much fun. I just wanted to hammer bowls. I'm like, as you could tell from my wall of inspiration, the Maritimes I find is very inspiring, and I like being near my family and all the artists that I grew up around and having their support, and you know, the view of the marsh over there is very inspiring. Well, I find the art community here is very, well, there's a lot of people, and everyone seems to be very supportive of each other, and yeah, it brings, because there's so many people here, it brings a lot of new artists in to visit, which is always inspiring and fun. Most of my work is wheel-based stuff. I do a little bit of hand building, but I just really like using the wheel. I think it's my favorite part. You put it on the wheel upside down so you can clean up the bottom, because you can't, well, it's stuck to the wheel, so you can't really do anything with the bottom. It's called trimming. And I just use an old pen to sign my name on the bottom because it's really comfortable to use. There's tools that are made especially for doing that kind of stuff, and they're really sharp. And I find that it just kind of scratches a bit too much. Yeah, I wait till I have enough to fill the kiln, because it takes a whole day to fire the kiln. You load it one day, you fire it, and then you can't unload it till the third day. So it takes a long time, and it uses a lot of energy. So I want to make sure the kiln's as full as I can get it. Yeah, it depends what kind of glaze and what temperature that you're going to, but the cone 6 that I fire to is about 1200 degrees Celsius. Well, this is my favorite black glaze, and yeah, so we've got all the different chemicals I use, and then I have it measured out in the 100 grams is kind of just like this much, just a little, like in a plastic cup worth of glaze that would be just enough to do a little test. And then I've got it weighed out into 500, or no, wait, what is that? 5,000 grams or 10,000 grams of the chemicals, and then that makes like a big like oil bucket, something that you would get from a bakery filled with glaze, and then I can just dip the whole piece into the bucket. Well, I think when I make a piece, and I just know when I make it that I really like it, and if I can repeat it, then I find it successful. Sometimes it takes a long time to make that piece again. I made a teapot that was blue with the white sharp spots, like the polka dots on it were sharp, and that was just a fun experiment, and it started a whole new line of work. We're doing the blue pots with the white polka dots, and I just make sure they're not sharp so that people can actually use them. But yeah, so I guess making that teapot kind of inspired a whole new line of pottery. I like the idea of making things that people use every day. It's just something that's in their home that they're going to use all the time. I really like the idea of, everyone seems to have that favorite coffee cup that no one else is allowed to use or touch. I love the idea of making that coffee cup for someone that, it's like, that's mine. You're not allowed to use it because you might break it. Sometimes I really don't like a piece, or sometimes if the kiln gets too hot and it just sticks to a shelf, sometimes things just kind of melt and become these weird blobs. Or sometimes there's a piece that's just so perfect that I can't part with it till I make more like it. And they just hang out here and I look at them. Or I also have a corner in my kiln room where I smash things that I really don't like. Yeah, there's this little vase that I like the way that it comes back out again at the top. I haven't figured out how to repeat that yet. There's a teapot in the house that goes with this, but that's one of the, it started the polka dot line. This is one of the, with the sharp white spots on it. It's one of my favorites. What else do I have? My very first potter's wheel. I think that I was probably 8 or 9 years old. I got it for Christmas. And it came with a little bit of clay and paint, little things of paint that were all in little plastic containers together in a tube. Paint brushes.
And did you use it?
I tried. It didn't work, for the clay was too hard and it just made a lot of weird groaning noises. So I did some hand building stuff. Little battery operated wheel.
But you kept it all this time?
Yep.